Flash the message, something's out there, floating in the summer sky. 99 red balloons go by. Red balloons flowing in the summer sky. Panic bells, it's red alert. There's something's here from somewhere else. The war machine springs to life, opens up one eager eye, focusing it on the sky. It's 99 red balloons go by. 99 Decision Street. 99 ministers meet to worry, super flurry. Call the troops out in a hurry. This is what we've waited for. This is voice, this is war. The president is on the line. As 99 red balloons go by. 99 nights of the air, by super high-tech jet fighters. Everyone's a superhero, and everyone's a Captain Kirk, with others to identify, to clarify and classify, scramble in the summer sky. It's 99 red balloons go. 99 dreams I have had, and everyone a red balloon. It's all over and I'm standing pretty in this dance that was a city. If I could find a souvenir just to prove the world was here. And here is a red balloon. I think of you and let it go. Her hair is hollow gold, her lips sweet surprise. Her hands are never cold. She's got Bette Davis eyes to turn her music on. You won't have to think twice. She's pure as New York snow. She's got Bette Davis eyes. And she teases you, she unease you, all the better just to please you. She's precautious, and she knows just what it takes to make her blush. She got Greta Garbo, stand up side. She's got Bette Davis eyes. She let you take her home. It was her appetite. She'll lay you on her throne. She got Bette Davis eyes to take her tumble on you. Roll you like to a dice until you come out blue. She's got Bette Davis eyes. She'll expose you when she knows you off your feet with a crumb. She throws you. She's ferocious and she knows just what it takes to make her pop blush. All the boys think she's a spy. She's got Bette Davis eyes. And she'll tease you, she'll unleash you, all the better just to please you. She's precautious, and she knows just what it takes to make her pop blush. All the boys think she's a spy. She's got Bette Davis eyes. She'll tease you, she'll unleash you just to please you. She's got Bette Davis eyes. Dark in the city, night as the wire, still in the sideway, air as a fire. Do 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 do. Woman, you want me? Give me a sign. I got no freedom even closer behind. Do 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 do. In touch with the crowd, I'm not the hunter after you. after you. Stand on the sound, I'm lost and I'm found. I'm hungry like the wall. That's for the ground. I'm on the hunt. I'm after you. Smell like the sun. I'm lost in the crowd. I'm hungry like the wall. Mouses alive. We just like one. I'm hungry like the wall. I can't stop, yeah, the way I feel. The things you do just don't seem real. Tell me what I got in mind, 'cause we're running out of time. Won't you ever set me free? This waiting around is killing me. She drives me crazy.
We'll get started in a couple of minutes. Stage rearranging. Well, actually, we're streaming this, so yes, we're streaming it live. But I mean, I can ask. Said they're okay with that, so he doesn't. Welcome. Good evening, and welcome to the. Just want to make sure he gets up so we can stream this to our audience. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Enoch Pratt Free Library. My name is Vivian Fisher, and I am Deputy Chief of Public Services here at the Central Branch. This year, we are celebrating the 20th anniversary of the African American Department here at Central. And we have gift bags for all attendees, so don't forget to get your bag if you didn't get one when you came in. We are so excited to have this artist panel with Derek Adams, Shanique Smith, and moderator Tanya R. Miller Hall this evening. But before I begin introductions, I would like to remind everyone that we have many upcoming programs coming soon. So make sure that you check out our Compass newsletter and our Pratt webpage. Now for this evening's guest. Shanique Smith's multidisciplinary practice includes painting, sculpture, video photography, installation, and performance. Exploring ideas of transformation and ritual through materials such as fabric, clothing, and personal belongings, breath, bundling, collage, and gesture. Smith has built a complex visual vocabulary that resonates on intimate and social scales. Her totemic works bear the presence of her body and serve as containers that operate at the convergence of consumption, displacement, and spiritual sanctuary. Born in Baltimore, currently residing in Los Angeles, Smith's works have been featured in exhibitions and collections of many prestigious institutions, including Baltimore Museum of Art, Brooklyn Museum, LACMA, Denver Art Museum, Minneapolis Art Museum, Minneapolis Art Institute, Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, the Guggenheim and Studio Museum in Harlem. Smith is a 2022 recipient of the American Academy of Arts and Letters Purchase Prize. She has also received awards from Joan Mitchell Foundation, Tiffany Foundation, and Anonymous Was a Woman. Smith earned an MAT from the Museum School, an MFA from the Museum School, and MFA from Maryland Institute College of Art, where she was awarded the Alumni Medal of Honor in 2012. Derek Adams is a multidisciplinary artist living and working in Brooklyn, New York. He celebrates and expands the dialogue around contemporary Black life and culture through scenes of normalcy and perseverance. He has developed an iconography of joy, leisure, and the pursuit of happiness within a practice that encompasses painting, sculptures, collages, performances, video, and public projects to produce multifaceted figures and faces that address the richness of the Black experience. In 2022, Adams established in his hometown Charm City Cultural Cultivation, an organization to support and encourage underserved communities in the city of Baltimore through events conducted by 3 entities: the Last Resort Artist Retreat, a residency program that subscribes to the concept of leisure as therapy for the Black creative; the Black Baltimore Digital Database, a collaborative counter-institutional space for collecting, storing, and safekeeping the data of local archival initiatives; and Zora's Den, an online community of Black women writers started in January 2017, which has since expanded into in-person writing workshops, a writer's circle, and a monthly reading series that strive to promote instruction, support, and social engagement. Adams' art has been featured in many exhibitions and collections of several prestigious institutions, including the Cleveland Museum of Art, the Museum of American Art, the Museum of Arts and Design, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and the Whitney Museum of American Art, to name a few. Additionally, Adams has mounted public installations commissioned through art at Amtrak by New York City Penn Station. Tanya R. Miller Hall is this evening's moderator. She is the Senior Advisor of Arts and Culture and leads the Office of Arts and Cultures for Mayor Brandon Scott. She is a highly accomplished professional with an impressive background in the fashion, social justice, and lifestyle brand industries. She has worked for some of the world's valuable companies, including Time Inc., William Morris Endeavors, Viacom, Gay Men's Health Crisis, and the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, to name a few. She has marketed and produced highly visible programs and events such as the New York Fashion Week, the National Equal Justice Awards, New York AIDS Walk, and the list goes on. Please join me in welcoming our hometown panelists this evening to the Pratt Library for this exciting program as we continue to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the African American Department.
Hello. Okay.
Hello.
Testing.
Testing, testing.
Shanique.
My mic sounds nice.
All righty. Well, good evening, and thank you all for coming to this great conversation. I'm really a bit nervous to hang out with these cool kids tonight. This is my first time meeting Shanique, and of course, Derek and I go back many years. You know, I'm going to start with a question. I'm just going to jump right in, and I need my glasses, and I printed out my questions because I'm old. I'm going to start with Shanique. Your work often utilizes everyday objects and materials. What is the process behind selecting these items? And how does that contribute to the narrative of your art? I read that you also keep mementos from your life in some of your pieces. And so can you talk to us about this process?
Okay. Well, I make paintings and sculpture using objects, fabric. If you haven't seen my work, there's one downstairs at the African American Reading Room. I use these things because I guess it happened somewhere in my living room, and growing up in Evanston Village, you know, my grandmom used to kind of patchwork together fabrics to cover up rips in the couch, or, you know, there'd be florals and brocades and like things that aren't mismatched kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a poster of Romare Bearden on the wall, and we're all in the living room like watching Sanford and Son with the junk. And somewhere in there, I think my aesthetic kind of developed, making something from nothing, the beauty that comes from, I guess, these little things that are
Discarded.
or that's bits of, you know, that handkerchief you hold on to because it belonged to so-and-so, the memories that we put on the objects, the hopes, the dreams of our belongings. And so all the work has something of mine in it, or something of people I know, friends, family, my parents, my grandparents, and a lot of bits in printed matter and things from here. So the process is collecting, hoarding, if you will, for years, and then putting them together in a way that is poetic.
Mm-hmm. Do you catalog these things? The objects, are they cataloged in different?
That's a great question. We never get asked these questions.
I do actually. You would think that looking at some of the work that it's like a big mess, right?
Yeah.
But you know, there's drawers that are labeled things like doll pieces, mismatched socks, or black and white stickers. So they're cataloged, but I also catalog fabric. I have a big book where I save swatches, and where I write notes. And maybe it only means something to me, but there's the narrative that you're talking about. Right. I assign meaning to different patterns.
Do you find that people give you things in hopes that it ends up in one of your pieces?
Yes. I had to put the kibosh on that. But I still have boxes of things that I've probably never used, people's shoes. I don't use a lot of shoes.
They're like, this would be great if you could use this thing in your next
My
Show.
ex-boyfriends, move out. They're like, oh, you can make art out of that.
And then they'll tax you
and
for
I
it.
did know,
right?
and then I do, and they get no percentage.
No percentage.
No, but it has. Remember, did you ever see that piece with Sean Ryan's socks?
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway,
Came from a boyfriend.
yes. Or the thing is that it's a kind of like recycling, but it's also equalizing gesture. That my stuff and your stuff and things from the past come together in one form, and they're all on the same playing field.
And I think that's great. I mean, considering there's like these narratives about over consumerism, so you're putting some of this stuff, some of these objects to great use and beautiful pieces, making beautiful art out of it.
That's one of the goals.
Yeah. Mr. Adams, Derek, talk to me about Black joy. And that seems to be, that is a resonating theme in your work. Obviously, lots of people have co-opted Black joy, I feel. But as not that you were the architect of this movement, but I think I can attribute that to you. Talk to me about Black joy and why it's so important.
It's so funny. I was in the shower the other day and I was thinking about how, when you are an artist and you're making things and as you start to generate objects and generate context, when people write about your work or try to understand why you make what you make and how it resonates within the world, it always has to fit within some kind of conformative categorization, which is fine. But I was thinking about Black joy, and I was thinking, like, all the work I do, I'm like, Black joy is serious business. because like, it's a lot of work to like really establish this idea of normalcy within Black culture in a way that resonates with people, where they can see a conversation that elevates to a space where people are talking about the complexities or even dismissing it. But it's a lot of work. Like, it's serious. I was thinking about that. I was like, this is a serious business, the things that I do. And even though I make work that highlights the idea of leisure or Black normalcy, like, I don't really take that many breaks. And people who know me know that I don't really indulge in leisure in the way that I create work about. I don't. I actually am more interested in creating a context.
So you're not splashing around in pools?
No, I don't have time for that. I don't. But I believe that those types of images are very important for people to see in the world. And I'm not saying that these images existed from me, but I know that prior to myself making them and putting them and being very intentional about where they are and how they are presented, artists who made them before were being challenged by society, because they believe that with everything happening in the world and, civil rights movement, I remember like what Jacob Lawrence, who's one of the most celebrated Black artists, and the reason why I actually came to the library for the first time, he was up against the Black Panther movement at one point, because he was a popular artist and he was an artist who was invited to a lot of things, and they were really upset with him because he was not making images of resistance and images of Black people being tortured or whatever. And they were really questioning his place in society, because he was making these works that really celebrated the normalcy of Blackness. And the Black Panthers did not like it. They did not like that other people liked his work. They did not like that his work was celebrated by other Black people and other people, because he was not acknowledging what was happening within the civil rights movement. And when I learned that, I was so moved, because one thing does not negate the other thing. Like, I realized that when the fact that he was this Black guy who was in his early 20s having these big major moments, he was the success of the civil rights movement. Him as a person, he was this person who came from this family, who married this other artist who was also from this very, traumatic experience, and they made a life for themselves, and they were educators, and they were influencers, and they changed people's lives, and and they were able to come into spaces that other people were not able to come into, and they brought other people with them. And so when I learned that during this, during the civil rights movement, he was met with so much resistance from a lot of the activists, I was very somewhat disturbed by it, because they did not realize the importance of balance when it comes to representation of Black imagery. It's okay to make work about politics and things that are important for people to make, but Black people's joy is also political.
Absolutely.
Yes, and I think that if I was living then, I would have came at the Black Panthers and say, listen, this is radical too.
Right.
This is not unradical, because you see a couple laying on the couch hugging and being happy and being joyful. And the fact that, within all of these, well, first of all, you had to think, like, even the space that we're in right now was not designed for Black people. The people who built this space did not have us in mind, did not care that we would be here, thought that they didn't want us to be here. Most spaces that we occupy or we walk through was not designed for us. That the people that built them are probably turning around their grave right now if they saw me up on the stage, because their intentions of building this space was not for me to be here. So that's a Black joy.
Right.
Because that's something that we should acknowledge, that the liberties that we are participating in was not designed for us.
Right.
It was not created. When someone thought about this library, did not think, one day I want Black people to be in this library reading. No.
Well, actually, I think this particular library is one of the few places Black people could go back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, they went here. I mean, and the reason why I even became, moved to New York to make art is because I was at CCB, which was, I don't know what it's called now, but I was doing a report.
CCB.
It was called CCBC or something now.
Yeah.
But when I was there in 1991, I was tasked to do a book report on an artist, and I came here for the first time, and I discovered a book on Jacob Lawrence. And in the book, it was a painting of his works, and I didn't see a picture of him until I flipped to the back, and I saw this young Black artist with a pipe, with a suit, very dashing, and I read that he taught at Pratt. And then I went back to my teacher, and I said, I'm going to Pratt. I'm leaving this place. I'm going to Pratt. I'm going to Brooklyn. I called Pratt. I found out how to get there, how to present my portfolio. I got in, but this
And
library
aren't you professor there?
this library is the reason why I am who I am now. Because I picked up a book. So these things that, when I think about this idea of joy or normalcy, I think that, it's something that is also very political, and something that is serious business, and something that we have to aggressively take. Black joy is something that's taken, is not given. It's different than other people's joy, because people don't think that we should be happy, because so much stuff is going on with us, on us, about us, that people, even Black people, don't think that Black joy is a real thing.
Right.
That's true.
Yes.
I mean,
So to piggyback off of your experience with this library, I'm going to ask a question about libraries and how important they are.
I have a
a follow-up, Tim?
I
Okay.
have a follow-up.
Okay, cool. Let's go.
I would say, because Derek and I both deal in Black joy
Mm-hmm.
We did.
and beauty. And he's absolutely right about the radicality of it. And it's still radical. Because when we were in school, when I was in school and I talked about joy, beauty, spirituality, those things were rebuffed and put down as frivolous things, especially coming from a woman like frolicking. I made a video, what was it, 2007, and women were frolicking in this video, just dancing around. And we did a little tour, and this woman said to me, Black woman said, Shanique, this video is so weird because, Black girls don't frolic. Sure, right. And I was like, wow, I hadn't thought of that. Maybe it was something I had taken for granted because I was encouraged to have that. But, finding it in everyday things, finding it in the normal sea of watching TV together, sitting around, swimming, and those indulgences is radical, and it's super important. And it isn't easily won. Happiness is something different than joy. Joy comes after you've come through hardships and you feel almost an ecstasy of being alive anyway. And that's
Amen.
There's nothing, what else is,
That's what it is. I mean, happiness is something that, based on your social construct, you could just be happy because there's nothing to compare sorrow to. And if you're happy, the idea of being happy is something that is, I feel, is a fabrication of your environment. You could be like that. But joy is something that is projected, and it usually has to do with a psychological framework that you adopt. And, for my work, I didn't really realize this idea of like the idea of Black joy or whatever in my work. But when I was in graduate school, I had a situation also with another Black instructor where I was making work that because I was honestly, I remember this line from a documentary with James Brown, and he was being interviewed, and I think he was on a talk show, and they was asking him about, after segregation and, Black students were in college, and they were saying like, why did Black students usually congregate with each other? It's now that everything is more, collective. And he thought that after segregation, I forgot the talk show, but he was asking him, why is this after, everything has happened, everything's opened up, why would it still be exclusionary? And James Brown was like, because Black people just like being around each other. Like they're constantly just discovering things about each other. You think that we know each other because we're Black, just like Irish and Italian and Jewish people are around each other. We're learning about each other. Because we are Black doesn't mean that we know everything that Black people do. We're from the South, we're from the North, we're from the Caribbean, we're from the European country. We're learning each other. So to see us together doesn't mean that we are saying the same thing to each other. We actually are learning things that we had no idea about because we have been separated in a lot of different ways. So I thought it was really interesting because I realized it made me think about like, why am I always gravitating towards this space when I'm in a space when I was in college, undergrad or whatever, is because you realize that for the first time, you're in an educational space where there's a Black person who has a totally different experience than you've had. And they might not even think that they're Black. They be like, I'm not Black. And they're dark as me. And they're like, in my country, Black is not a thing. It's a this. And you're like, really? And you learn these things.
That's a whole nother panel.
Yeah.
I'm saying, but you learn.
A different panel.
I'm saying, but the idea that the construct of Blackness outside of the United States, and is very different. And like it or not, is based on the idea of not being aware of how these constructs are established. So joy to me is really, and the reason why that and we kind of getting off this, we get back on. But the reason why I started the nonprofit in the last resort is because I feel like we still are trying to establish as Black people, what is the difference? What is difference? What is difference within the pool of Blackness from like conversations about people who are from the continent of Africa who've never had the experience that Black Americans have had and different things like that. So to me, I feel like that's still a very new conversation that has not really been dealt with in a certain particular type of way so we can move forward in other ways. So I think that, you know, again, like everything that we're doing is really intentional and deliberate. And it's not a comparative thing. Like we're not saying that this is better than that. I'm more saying that this and this and that, and this and this and that, not this versus that. Like it's not like about competition of like what's valuable and what's not valuable. I think that people think of it in that way, but it's not necessarily what, like when I think about Shanique's work, I think that I knew when I saw her work and we got to know each other. I think that I can tell that, you know, by the work that where she's from and how she's material and how it relates, and hanging out with her and just knowing certain things about the culture. And I started to realize when I went to college, like Baltimore Black is different than New York
Brooklyn
Black. You know, like New York white is different than Baltimore white. Like white people know that about each other, but Black people didn't really know that about each other. It wasn't like a thing. But, you know, even like within cultures, like people can be the same race and be different from where they landed. And so we never really had that moment of looking at that in an academic way or as an aesthetic. And now we are at a place where we're looking at aesthetics within Blackness based on regional placement. And I think art is showing that when we look at types of art that we're looking, because we've always looked at other artists, primarily white artists in museums, and talked about New England and talked about New Hampshire and talked about the Hudson River paintings. And we talked about, you know, we didn't talk about like international artists. We talked about, New Haven. Like, you know, we understood like the difference between whiteness and art based on your regional placement. But Black people have never, you know, at one time, Southern art was like outside of art. You know, it wasn't like academic. It was like, oh, they're from the country and they're using stuff with sticks and painting sticks. But, you know, if other artists who went to Black Mountain School and they hung out in Black Mountain School and they made things. And Jacob Lawrence was one of the first Black artists who was invited to Black Mountain School. So to me, it's just really about people understanding the discovery of the bigger picture of who contributed what and how the contributions are what we all now participate in and we benefit from.
Yes. Okay. I'm gonna. All right, we're gonna go to the next question. Since we're here at a library, and you mentioned it in your comments, libraries are often seen as hubs of knowledge and inspiration. Your work is here in the library. I spent many a days here doing book reports in this library. Can you share how libraries have influenced your artistic journey and can influence others and provide inspiration to their work? This is for both of you. You can take it.
Take a little break. Well, libraries have been everything for me, especially Enoch Pratt. I went to the one in Evanston Village. We'd walk up there every day. And I'd come here on the weekends when I was little to the children's area. There used to be a little koi pond down there. And they would have story time. I feel like it helped raise me. I was an only child too. We talked about that earlier. And so it helped stretch my imagination, the accessibility, you know, giving me access to not just books, but also a space to read and be that was welcoming and encouraged the opening of my mind. And, you know, for me, my creative experience and who I am as a creative being developed within a 4-mile radius of this building. You know, like from Evanston to the harbor, this library was the central point for me. I come here every day after school in high school on my way to catch the bus down by Lexington Market. And it means just that, you
A
encourages
place of discovery.
a place of discovery, of safe haven. And I came to, when I was asked to do the piece here, it was a commission. I was so honored because this is literally one of my favorite places. And doing the commission, we did tours of the building. And I got to go down into the bowels of the building, like the basement, and all these little nooks and crannies here that I never had access to before. And this building is actually indestructible. So this is a place where if there's an earthquake or like a fallout, come here. And the bookshelves actually hold the building up. There are these big steel bookshelves in the basement that are the foundation holding the books. It's creepy down there, but I mean, I don't know what else to say. It means everything. It means the world. And it's a place I think about when I'm not here. It's part of my memory of my youth.
Understood. And so, Derek, and I mean, libraries are almost, they're public spaces, obviously. The world of public art, public spaces. How did this library, or not specifically this library, but you talked a little bit about Jacob Lawrence, but how does this libraries provide a source of inspiration?
Well, I just think that most of these public spaces in Baltimore, like the library here, have been like a beacon for so many different people for many different reasons. I grew up in Park Heights, and we had our own like little local library, and we would walk up Park Heights to, I guess it was like Rogers. I don't know where it was. It was like Garrison Library, and it was like book fair, and we have our little $5, and we'd go get some books when we were a kid in elementary school. Honestly, for people, I don't know of people who moved to Baltimore, but I grew up in the 70s, and Baltimore was a regular little middle-class Black place in black and white. Like everyone, even though the communities were segregated, people had the amenities that people needed. And I always think about it because I always think that when I think about my time growing up, I felt like I was in like Leave It to Beaver, the way I grew up in Baltimore. Like people don't even believe that when I tell them I grew up in Park Heights and it was like that. Like Park Heights is nothing like that now, but when I was a kid, if we jaywalked, the crossing guard would knock on your door and tell your parents that you jaywalked. And when you would come up from school, you would be in trouble because she would do it while you were like, if you didn't cross at the street and you decided to do a little cut into the alley, Miss Marie would knock on your parents' door, and when you got home, they would say, Miss Marie said that you jaywalked and you didn't cross at the street.
Miss Marie was in everybody's business.
Yeah, but no, Miss Marie was that person,
Snitch,
and
Miss Marie.
it was a very particular type of neighborhood that changed, with the crack epidemic and drugs in the late 70s, 80s, but 85. But I grew up where
Specifically.
we all, went to school together. The person who lived the furthest would knock on the person's door. We would all like, by the time we got to school, one person would knock on that person's door. Is Derek going to school today, Miss blah, blah, blah? Yeah, I would come out with my books. We would knock on the next person's door. Is blah, blah, blah going to school today, Miss blah, blah? And it'd be like 10 of us, 15 of us walking to school at the end of the day. That's not how people look at Baltimore, but that's my memory. And I believe that that's something we have to keep, real. And so the library for me was not just a place of education, but it was a community center. And they had activities that existed, for after school programs and things that I felt were really important for me as an artist. But it was really more about all the services that were attached to the library and spaces like this, and a lot of the teachers who taught at these schools worked at the library and worked at these after school programs. So we actually knew the gym teacher after school. Like it wasn't like he was a gym teacher and he would go home. He would actually leave there and be at the library after school, or, he would be the person who was organizing the talent contest for the neighborhood. So it was like those types of things that existed. So the library was not just a place of education, but it was about community, it was about shelter, it was about sanctuary. And, coming here, which was my first time, this is my second time coming here. Like the first time, yes, my second time coming to this
I
library.
used to come to this library
Yeah,
all the time.
it's my second time coming here. I'm from Park Heights. We don't be coming to the library downtown. Like we just go to the library up at Park Heights. You know? Yeah, no, we would go to the one on Garrison, or we would go to ones that are in that area of Northwest Baltimore. Yeah, it's the big one. So this was more like when I was in college and I needed to do a book report and I couldn't get the references I needed. I came here and this when I learned about Jacob Lawrence in this particular library. But normally I would just go to
The local library.
Yeah, and we also had encyclopedias back then. You know what I'm saying?
Fancy.
We had the whole A to Z encyclopedia at my grandmother's house. So like we would just look. Yeah.
Them just so that we could have them.
Yeah, we would just do encyclopedias, and then we would go to the library if it was something we couldn't find that we needed to reference that was more detailed. But coming here was such a big deal because I learned like a world outside of Baltimore that I was not as well versed. I knew I have family members who didn't live in Baltimore, but as an artist, first of all, I didn't know about Jacob Lawrence. I didn't know about Pratt. I didn't know that he taught at Pratt.
And
I
you
later
discovered that in a library.
Yeah, and I just pulled a book out. It was like and the book wasn't even that thick. It was like a small book, hardcover about his work. And then it's a great story. Can I just read this really quick? So I ended up meeting Jacob Lawrence.
I met him too.
Yes. Yeah, you did.
In Seattle.
Yeah, I met him
at his last show.
I loved him. He was so cool.
He was very cool.
So I went to Pratt. I found out about Jacob Lawrence. I went back to CCB and I said, "What is this school? Who is this artist? I'm leaving." I went there. I went to Pratt. I kept asking all the professors at Pratt, "Do you know who Jacob Lawrence is? Have you ever met him? Do you know him?" They were like, "Yeah, he's my teacher." Some people say he's my teacher. Some people say he lived down the street from me because he lived on Hancock in Brooklyn. I didn't know that before he moved to Harlem. He was in Harlem first, and he moved to Brooklyn before he moved to Seattle. He lived on Hancock. And I was always asking people about him. Like, do you know Jacob Lawrence? I just wanted to know him. Like, he was just so cool. I was like, who is this guy? And then and then he got around Pratt. Everybody knew I was like a Jacob Lawrence stalker, and I wanted to know who he was. And so they decided to honor him at Pratt. So he and his wife Gwendolyn came to Brooklyn, and they asked me to be their escort for the day. So at that time they were up in age and they could hardly, he was hard getting around his knees and everything. So they basically both of them held onto my arm, walking through the whole school all day. And I told him, I said, "You're the reason why I'm here." And he was just smiling, and we were talking, and we hung out the whole day. I was with him from like 9 in the morning to like the evening was a 6 o'clock event. And then, we talked, he did a poster, he signed it off, he signed it to me. We hung out. Then fast forward, I ended up meeting Barbara Earl Thomas, who lives in Seattle. Barbara Earl Thomas was a student who was assigned to Jacob Lawrence when he moved to Seattle to go to school there because Pratt would not give him tenure. So he had to go to Seattle to get a permanent teaching job. And Barbara Earl Thomas was the student who they assigned to, take him wherever he needed to go. She became like his daughter because he didn't have kids, both him and Gwendolyn. And so she drove, they did not drive. So she was pretty much their third wheel. So now Barbara and I are really close, and she talks to me all the time about him. And, she has his ashes. Both their ashes are in her house on her mantle. And he says, sometimes when I'm talking to her, she said, "You remind me of Jacob when you just said that." I said, "Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you. Thank you." You know what I'm saying? But the idea of being here and being in the space and being a library and being educated result in so many different things that we can't even estimate or predict.
I'm going to move to a different question. Both of you have strong work in public art and community engagement through art. How do you see the role of art in building and enhancing communities in urban settings? And both of you guys have lots of public art
Yeah,
projects.
Shanique does a lot of cool things. It's so different because public art, like for an artist to be commissioned, is so different because you are hired and you do a project. And sometimes, like we did the project in Arizona where you had people bring you clothes. Remember remember that project you did and you had people bring you stuff
In Arizona?
somewhere? I forgot what it was. It was
I've
like
done it a couple times.
yeah, it was the first
Yeah.
time you did it. I remember you did something
Maybe it was Boulder.
and you made those large sculptures and people brought you stuff. Yeah, it was like that's so the idea of like working with communities. And I remember you did that, and I was like, wow.
You learn a lot about a group of people from the clothes they bring you. Especially in Boulder, I remember we sorted it out the different colors, and there was a huge pile of beige.
Yeah,
And it really just kind of
yeah,
describes the city.
yeah. I mean, because people,
You-
surface really represents the identity of how people want to be projected, and that's certain people who just believe that like neutral things are less about being 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 the center.
as we
Yeah.
all wear black.
Yeah, we all wear black. Yeah,
The winter
yeah, we
uniform.
all wear black. Yes.
Talk to us about the recent project, the public art project that was on the National Mall, and how that came together.
Well, it's been really interesting too, because starting a nonprofit and then doing the things that are public. So doing the National Mall, which is a great thing. It was part of Beyond Granite, an organization that the Monument Lab, who's like a very important organization that does a lot of alternative thinking when it comes to monuments and what is a monument. And I was asked to propose a project. And so when I think about monuments, I personally believe, this is my creative practice, that the idea of building more like stagnant objects as representations of important figures will not, regardless of who they are, will not necessarily resonate with a new generation of citizens, because a new generation of citizens want an experience. And so things have to function beyond just the idea of reverence. They have to be functional. They have to be considered within the architecture, the way we walk through things, the way we are able to touch things, the way we are able to engage with things. I think they have to have some level of technology, some level of connectivity beyond the idea of just admiration. And it's not even saying that these other replacement objects are not significant, but it's plenty of monuments I walk by in Baltimore I could care less about. I don't care who they're about. How many times growing up in Baltimore we walk past important monuments that we just don't pay attention to? I don't care who they are, because those monuments I was not asked about them. I was not considered. I was not given my opinion about where they should go. Someone else decided where they should go, and now we have to deal with it. But I personally thought, when I was asked to do the project at the mall, it was really more about how to create something monumental, because the whole thing about monument is educating people about history. So why does it have to be ceramic? I mean, why does it have to be metal? Why does it have to be stone? Why does it have to be any particular traditional material? It's really more about people leaving in a way different than they came. And so my proposal was to create this monument, which was a playground. And it was a sculpture that acknowledged a moment in history when was the first desegregated playground in DC, which was that predated the civil rights era, in this particular park, where it was documented where Black and white kids were playing in this playground in DC. And so I recreated this idea of this playground that existed on the mall, also incorporating the photograph of the kids playing in the playground as kind of remembrance of that particular time, to consider and think about and understand that particular year it happened. And I felt like I feel like those types of monuments will be way more effective with the new generation of humans coming to terms as adulthood. I don't think that having bronze sculptures or
Yeah.
I mean, that, I mean, it's definitely going to be challenging because that's something that's already on repeat. And there's things that I'm doing that kind of talk about that. Like I made a sculpture with Kinfolk, which is a digital platform that reimagines historical imagery and historical monuments. That's kind of like Pokemon Go, but they call it like Wokeman, whatever. But basically, we recreate these monumental objects, and you can look at them on your phone. And I recreated a bust of both Victor Hugo Green and his wife Alma Green, who were the creators of the Green Book. And it shows up on Adam Clayton Powell's Plaza with your phone if you look. And eventually it's going to be some type of monumental stone object. But I really believe that anything even like that has to be attached to something that is digital, interactive, virtual. I just think that we have to think about the future of education and who we are trying to educate and what are their access points. Because one thing I learned with what I'm doing in Baltimore, with all the things that I'm doing, is that I've traveled all around the country. And what I think I do a lot, I always go to the African American Historical Society in almost every city to see the aesthetic. And what I've noticed is that most African American historical societies are not digitized. They have like foam core mounts, they have printed material, it's like turning, it's curling, it's not visually appealing to younger generations. And I personally think that we need to invest in digitizing and creating a technology-based system for accessing information in African American historical societies, because everything there seems more like mementos and not necessarily access points for people, especially younger people, to be able to access it. So my projects that I like to do have some element of digital framework that I feel, even myself, I'm not like a high technology person, but I realize what I'm deficient in. And I think there's an opportunity to think about monuments in a way that's going to be more empowering for future generations.
Right on. Yeah,
You want to take
question.
that? Yeah, or I can ask you.
Well,
Yeah, go on.
Same question.
Yeah.
So community, public art. I have made a lot of public projects, a couple of large scale mosaics and murals. And I like to take into account where it is, of course, the environment, the people. And because I want people to see themselves in it, I end up collecting elements just like I do for my other work and adding them to the design. So that's one of the approaches for me in public art, because it's not about commemorating. None of my one of my pieces is associated with people. One is for a Martin Luther King Jr. metro station in Los Angeles. I took some of his words and I riffed off of that, but it also incorporates bits of matter from the people who were there and mirror so that people can see themselves. I think Derek is right about the idea of interaction. Every piece I've made, I've had some sort of community engagement where one I made up is it Harlem? Yeah. Is it in Harlem? 138th Street. I made a piece and I did workshops with one of the elementary schools, and I incorporated their drawings into the work with the idea that they would see their drawings as they were growing up, passing this building, and see themselves incorporated in the monuments. And that's part of my background, is education and teaching kids. When I was here, I worked at the Walters in their education department. We taught through the collection in 3 elementary schools here. Mount Royal was one of them. And working with kids of that age is part of what inspires me to do community engagement, kids of all ages, because I was encouraged to make art and that my voice mattered as a kid. So making public projects or even a museum exhibition allows me to also create engagements for that. Part of why I went to school was so that, not the part of it, my whole motivation was to get a degree in education so that I could start a camp for kids.
Mm.
And through that process of teaching high school, elementary school, and then I went back to grad school and went off on my art career. You know, all of that is contributing to finally, like 20 years later, starting a summer camp for children, and it's starting this summer.
Oh, nice. Whereabouts?
And thank you. Yeah. Well, it doesn't have its own permanent space yet. So this summer we're doing it in Maine.
Hmm.
And I mean, the whole point is for kids, especially here. I grew up in Evanston Village. It was middle class, but it wasn't as
Yeah.
I-
When Miss Marie wasn't knocking on your door.
Huckleberry. Like it wasn't like Mayberry.
Yeah.
Mayberry, is that the one?
Yeah,
with Andy
yeah,
Griffith?
yeah. It was like that. Yeah, it was.
I mean, it shifted quicker. It was like that, but then it shifted quicker. So it wasn't quite like that. And there weren't a lot of opportunities for kids. Getting scholarships and having people encourage me to have a voice, even as like a little girl, you know, not being able to raise your hand and
Yeah.
speak, to like have a voice is really important. So, and to be creative, and that art is an actual avenue of expression and perhaps career is important. So I'm hoping for that. I mean, the whole idea of the camp, it's called Camp C3, is creativity, consciousness, and culture. So you learn about different cultures and kind of spirituality. I mean, that was the other thing growing up here, which was hard, but you know, and influenced my work. You were asking before about fashion and fabric and things like that. But the other thing is, my mom was the editor of Baltimore Style magazine, and she had a radio show on Morgan Station in the early 80s called The Mind's Eye, where she was teaching people how to meditate on the radio. And people thought we were crazy. Kooky,
Now mindfulness,
crazy.
meditation
now
is like,
everybody's like
yeah.
mindfulness and meditation. But when I came out talking about those things in my work, I was told it was hokey spirituality and that I was crazy and got made fun of. But so the whole idea for the camp is to like expand
Yes.
that for kids.
Find your
growing up.
tribe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
early on.
Yeah.
Early on.
Understood. I think we can, one more question, and then we're going to go to Q&A. So I'm going to do some rapid fire questions to make it quick.
Okay, cool.
Rapid fire, Derek.
rapid
It's
fire,
meant
okay.
to be
Rapid fire.
rapid.
I'm long-winded. Sorry. I'm like a rapper.
Okay, really quick. Favorite color to work with?
Gray.
Morning,
All my calligraphy is black
morning or night person for creativity?
all day.
All day.
One word to describe your art.
Deliberate.
Energetic.
We know the answer to this question, but biggest artistic influence, Derek.
I mean, it's many. I mean, Jacob was the reason I moved from here, but I have so many more influences from that time. I think he's more
Yeah.
of a influence from a male perspective.
And
Shanique.
style. And style.
In style, yes.
I think we're both influenced by Romare Bearden.
Yes, very much.
Favorite material or medium to use?
I don't even know. Fabric.
Fabric, ink, spray paint,
City or country for inspiration?
city.
City.
This is like a game show.
Yes. Music genre that you listen to get inspired?
Oh, everything.
City girls.
City girl.
City girls.
I don't even know this one. Okay, last one. Dream location for an art installation.
Mm.
I don't have one. I don't think I have one.
I Yeah.
And we've stumped them.
We've set them. I think we have had dreams that some of them have been fulfilled, and we're in the process of probably creating new ones. Some we've let go of because they don't matter as much. Like when I was a kid, my whole dream was to have work at MoMA, and I still don't, by the
Yeah.
way, and I don't care.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Well,
But
thank you both. We're going to go to Q&A.
here.
Thank you. Yeah.
We don't have murals here.
Yeah, we don't have mirrors here. We have mirrors in other cities, not in
We want
Baltimore.
to do work here. That's our
Yeah.
dream.
We need to do a
All
mural
right.
here.
Well,
At the
So
airport.
we have about 10 minutes for Q&A, and if you haven't had an opportunity, there's mics on both sides, but if you haven't had an opportunity, you probably won't have time this evening, but come back to the African American Department, and Shanique's piece is in the room, and it's beautiful, and the department has been refreshed, new paint, new carpet, the furniture has been refreshed, it's really beautiful there, and the artwork, and we also have,
Sam Gilliam.
we also have
Sam Gilliam in the same room.
Sam Gilliam working there. So we are really blessed to have those great two pieces of art. So we have time for a couple of questions. If you have questions, come to the mic because we are recording.
Yeah. 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 I can't. Yeah.
I'll make a question. You want me to?
Hi, thanks for coming.
They're gonna speak. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Very good presentation. I'm very much involved in my community in Upper Park Heights. I'm not an artist per se, although I can still draw with crayons. But more importantly, I'm concerned about the future of young people and the art, and as well as music. I have a deep interest in the music world as well. And my question from a community point of view, what can we as community activists do to ensure that we do our part in helping to have people become, not only take an interest in art, but to develop a passion for it, and to bring it to whatever career they want to go into, instead of getting in trouble in the streets or anywhere else. But what can we do to help out? Because we're coming from a community point of view. So what do you suggest?
I suggest, this is my opinion, that we should start demanding from our city legislators and people who we vote for that we make an added amendment to funding that go to the arts, that go to the creative community. I think that Baltimore historically has been known for, we're the grassroots city. How many people have started like nonprofits? We probably have done more nonprofits than most cities in America. And we get burned out because we get no help and we end up doing these things and never happens. We need like financial support from the city, and we need to have more just regulatory support. We just need it. Like it's like we can't, I mean, we have so many creatives here who are just amazing, and Tanya agrees with me. Like it's so many people here who are amazing and they don't have the support. And if we had that support, then we would thrive as a city, because one thing we've never tried. Like, let's try something we've never tried. Let's invest in the creative community. We've never tried that in the history of Baltimore. Let's try it. We tried everything else, it didn't work. Let's try this and see what happens. And I think that if we do this, we will benefit in a way that we've never benefited before. And I think that community people have always done the things you're saying. In almost every community, there's some person who decided to create like an arts organization or a community thing, and they're working by themselves and they're working a regular job and they're coming here working with kids and they're not getting any money. Then they have to close in a few years because there's no city support. We need support, and we need to make it part of the structure of the city. That's my 2 cents. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
I'll pull back. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Devon Caldwell. I'm a visual art teacher at Baltimore Collegiate School for Boys. And I actually wanted to ask a question specifically, just a quick one, to Shanique Smith. First, I want to say that I do teach about both of you in my class, so that's why I definitely wanted to come and hear from you. But I was interested in you said Camp 3C. I want to know more. Oh, I would love to know more information about that so I can share that with my students as well, if possible.
So okay, I can share you information with you later.
Sounds good. Thank
I
you.
mean, was there another question?
No, I just wanted to know more about
Yeah,
that.
give me
Yes,
your
yes,
email. I'll
yes,
hook you up.
I will. All right, thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Oh, so grateful for your presence, Janae Barr, multimedia, multidisciplinary artist. I've got to ask this question, Sam Gillian, in kind of paralleling what Jacob Lawrence was doing, Sam Gilliam, and also David Driscoll. I can't help but ask that question in terms of placing art history. And I know you all, came into contact with some of these folk or something. I can't help but ask that question because I thought about Sam Gilliam. Came in here.
If we came in contact with them?
Well, I thought about him when I was seeing your work,
Oh,
as well as just and then thinking about the placement of when you were doing your artistic practice, what Sam Gilliam was doing, and Jacob Lawrence in terms of his artistic practice, and what Sam Gilliam, because
Dave Driscoll was a big influence here growing up. He was one of the only Black artists that I knew of making abstraction at the time. I didn't know. Oh, can you hear me now? I was saying David Driscoll was a big influence in the area, and he was in Virginia, I think. So, he was one of the only Black artists that I knew of. When I wanted to learn about abstraction, there wasn't a lot to look at, especially women. So, I mean, those are great artists. But you know who else is great is Alma Thomas.
of course,
Check her out.
Very.
absolutely. Thanks for mentioning that. Yeah. Thank you so much.
My
Hey,
name
Jazz.
is Jazz Ehrenberg. I'm a local muralist here in Baltimore. And I had a question about sort of the language of the materials that you use, right? So Derek, you mentioned in your National Mall project that you touched on sort of traditional materials that monuments are made out of versus non-traditional. And I wondered if you, in both of your work, sort of categorize materials by their like language of authority, and if so, are there any materials that you consider to characterize Black joy?
I think that you can impose any ideals on any object if it's deliberate and you are strategic with where they go and how they are enacted by audience. And so I always think about, like, I make paintings, but I also make other things. So I look at myself, regardless of people knowing my work as paintings, I think of myself as more a multidisciplinary artist because what I love about doing projects is like, I always ask people like, what can't I do first? Because I don't want to be thinking about having this grand idea that's not going to happen. So I'm like, what can I do to this space, or what can I not do? And when I realize from the individuals or organizations what's not supported, then it helps me to really think more strategically about how to push boundaries on what can be done. And so I think the I believe the materials have a history and they have a language. And so when I make a playground, which is about, social interaction and relational aesthetics, I think there's a benefit to using that to speak about other political things. And one thing that was really great about making a playground that I learned later on with the article is that Baltimore was a very important event happened in Baltimore that was playground focused during the civil rights era, with a merry-go-round that was here in Baltimore that's now stationed on the National Mall. And it was not there when I was there because it's being refurbished. But it was one of the most talked about, written about things that happened during the civil rights era, because someone brought their kid to this merry-go-round in Baltimore, and it became like this whole heated like civil rights case based on the idea, the politics of play. And I did not know that until I made this piece. So I believe that everything is kind of attached, but you should Google it. Everyone should Google the story of, say what? The merry-go-round was somewhere up in like past Harford Road. it was this merry-go-round that was here, part of a playground. I mean, part of an amusement park in Baltimore that became very politicized during the civil rights era, and it became yes. Was it Gwen Oak? No, it wasn't Gwen Oak. It was because I remember saying like it's not that far from where I am in Waverly, but I'm not positively sure of the area. But there's a really important article that was written about this merry-go-round because now it's being refurbished or being painted over or whatever. Yeah, restored, and it's going to go back onto the National Mall, and it hasn't been there for a while. And it happened based on my doing my thing, and then the reporter probably thought like, "Oh, he's not the first person to do this. Let me tell him. Let me show him." Blah blah. But it's good. I've been educated, about things that I didn't know. So I think that materials have its own like little thing. So I like to use the material and the history that people associate the material with to make art from. Yes. No, you're next.
I'm kind of short, so.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you for being here today. My name is Janaya Coombe. I'm a graduate student here in Baltimore from New York, painter at MICA. And my question is for the both of you regarding Black joy. My work has a lot to do with grief, family, and Black joy. And my question was from you, Shanique, when you had mentioned the rebuttal you got from making work around that. And I know you, Derek, as well, had mentioned Black joy in your work being around that. How do you deal with standing up for the importance of that work being present, like the importance of it being out there in the world, and sometimes knowing that work about Black joy is just about Black joy, and sometimes it doesn't have to be political, but yet that once it's out there, people will make it about. Sometimes it becomes political when it should just be about being that.
I'll go first. Are you in Mount Royal or
Hofburger?
Three things, three quick answers. One, to keep your center is hard. You want this exchange in the way the school is set up. You put up your work and people come and they tear it down and they basically tell you it sucks. Or they say you should use more color if you're making black and white art, or you should make something that's more serious if it's too frivolous. Everyone has an opinion, like Salt and Pepper said. Opinions are like, and everybody's got one. So, I mean, you can't try to please everyone in the room. And one of my mentors, our mentors, is Fred Wilson, said, he did a talk years ago, and he said there are only there are a few different kinds of love you're going to have as an artist. One is going to come from your peers. One is going to come from critics. One may come from museums, and one may come from collectors, the people who buy the art, right? But it's rare that you get them all at one time, and you don't need to strive to get them all at once either, right? So be true to yourself, and being true to yourself is also, you have to have your own critical eye. Are you saying what you want to say in the most advanced way that you can say it, right? And unfortunately, everything you do is going to be political. You're a Black woman in America. You standing here asking us that question is political. You being alive and existing and having a voice is politicized no matter what you do. So don't worry about that. Don't stress over it. Make the work and then see what happens. You don't have to try to be a star either, right? Because people worry about being a star so much that they don't make good art. So be you, because you already seem cool. You're sincere.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I always think that, when people I teach college now and I've been teaching for a while, but I always think like when people have opinions that may not necessarily be in line with the way you view your work, I honestly think that some things are valid, but there are just things for you to consider. And I believe that to be a really good artist, you have to make people so comfortable that they can say whatever they think about your work, because that's the real world. You don't have to incorporate all those things that they say, but you have to acknowledge that that's a perspective that they see based on what you've presented. And sometimes when you're making something that does not align with what people hope you would make, that really has to do with how their expectation on you as a person, as an artist, but does not necessarily have to redirect your path as a creative person, but it will give you something to consider. Because there's some things that people do come to your studio and say that we may not have been thinking about, but it's based on their interpretation of what they're looking at. And so what I do most of the time when people tell me things about my work, I say, that's something to think about. I didn't say that because that kind of just kills everything.
Yeah.
Because the resistance make people way more combative with you. So when you know that you're getting at something and you're interested in something, when people come to your studio and they say things that may not be aligned with what you're thinking, just say that's something to think about. I never looked at it that way. That's what I do all the time. I'm like, I never looked at it.
That's very
Wow. Color? Oh, I didn't think about color. Oh, collage? Oh, I didn't think about that. Oh, thank you for letting me know that. Okay, cool. And then I just keep it going,
That's really good.
Yeah, and I'll be.
You don't have to show them everything either.
Yeah, and I'll be like, why do you think it should have color? Why is it, are you desiring color these days? Is that something that you're really into? Do you really, I turn it back to the person.
Yeah.
I'm like, why do you, do you like figures? It's too abstract for you. What's, tell me a little bit about your disdain for figures. And I want to know a little bit more about your ideas. Yeah, make it about them, because they're saying what they think based on visual, their encounter with it. It might actually make the work better because then you get to say like, oh, I actually think that, because then people have to prove to you why they think what they think, and they can somehow influence a good direction if they say something legitimate about why they feel the way they feel about what they're looking, and you're like, oh, I didn't think of that. Okay, so let me maybe, I just feel like school is really about just letting things go through you. Don't go into school combative. Don't go into grad school. It's a focus group.
A focus group is a good way.
That's what I thought. When I went to Columbia, I thought it was a focus group. My first year, I would just let people say what they were saying, and they would come to me afterwards and explain why they said what they said. And I'm like, I appreciate what you said, and that's your opinion, and I'll consider those things. I never created any type of pushback because I used all of that information from the year I first got there as what I needed for the next year. So the second year, I was ready because I heard all the stuff that people were saying, and I took all of it, thought of, processed it, used some of it, threw some of it away, and I formed my identity of what I make now based on those things. So I always say to people all the time, just let it go through you. If you have people in your studio, they don't feel comfortable enough to say what they're thinking, that's wrong. Let them sound stupid.
Yeah.
Let them sound it's better for them to feel so comfortable they can say what they're thinking, because this is the world, and most people do not say what they're thinking. So you want them to do that. You want them to say what they're thinking, and you take that information and use it as ammunition to make the best work you can make.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
My name is Jatan. I'm a fashion designer, I guess, which is its own artistry. Do you guys have any suggestion for the independent artist who wants to create her own public works art installation, but she doesn't have the backing of Enoch Pratt Free Library or City of Baltimore or any other kind of organization, do you have any suggestions like who she might contact? Does she need a peddler's license? Is there some kind of licensure she needs to just
What kind of
create-
installation are you talking about?
I'm thinking like it would be a garment, definitely, and that's it.
I would take it to the streets.
Right. That's
What I would do. I mean, I just
I
think
want to take
need
it to
a
the
license
street,
to
but
exhibit,
do you need a license? Like if I put something on the corner of what is it, Saratoga and Utah?
Yes.
Well, you're gonna need a permit.
You'll need a permit, and
Right.
if you install it, unless you have, I mean, you run the risk of it being vandalized, right? So if it's temporary, if you're
Right.
doing like a one-day activation, you could do it guerrilla style.
so. You're talking to
and-
the right person now. She work for
Yeah.
the
But I
city.
still would
She
need-
work
I
for
mean,
the
you
city.
could just do it guerrilla style, and if it's a one-day activation, I'm not advising you as a representative of the mayor's office.
I mean, you could, yeah. So what Tanya's saying about guerrilla style, put it up
It's
and take it down, here's the thing, you could put it up, document it really well.
mhm.
You could take it somewhere else, put it
Right.
up, document it really well, and then you have documentation that then you can apply for a
Yeah.
grant for something else.
Okay, but I would need a permit.
I mean, you should look at
Unless
like
you do it guerrilla style.
if you look at like David Hammonds or Singing
yeah,
a
with the
Goody.
snowball.
Yeah, if you look at David Hammonds or Singing a Goody, Marion Hessinger, all those artists from LA called LA Objects. These were the artists in the 70s who were doing these interventions
Well, they're
out
like
in the street.
performances.
Right.
They were doing these things. David Hammonds was making snowballs. They would sell on
And
the
selling
street.
them,
They were
snowball
d-
sale.
They were doing all these like very alternative things that were in the public space. And
Yeah.
But
there,
that's in
If
the
it's-
70s.
Here's the
It's
thing. When I was
2023.
here
I mean,
in
it
grad
ain't
school, I
changed.
did some performances just out on the sidewalk.
It would be
They were
a
very
mannequin.
brief.
It would be a mannequin with an outrageous.
We're just saying,
garment.
if you can do it without a permit, probably. If you do it fast
Uh-huh.
and take it away, document it. That's one way. If you
Okay.
want it to stay up, you will need a permit. It will get vandalized. It might. It don't say might. It will. Stolen,
wouldn't-
vandalized. I would take it.
Well, I'm going to sit there while it's there.
I'm just saying.
Right,
But I don't
right.
want to. I don't want to do it and then an hour later be gone. I want the people to kind of enjoy it.
Well,
If a crowd,
It
if
could
you
be
think
part of
a big
Artscape.
crowd is going to come,
Mhm.
then you would need a permit, because ultimately someone will say, this woman has a mannequin and there are 200 people standing
Mm.
around it, and then the police will arrive.
Right. That's what I'm.
you could
afraid of,
also
the
So you
try
can
to
apply
have a
for a
booth at
permit.
Artscape. They have artist exhibitors.
By the Artscape.
Yeah,
By
it's
the
very
Artscape.
expensive.
See that gentleman right there? You should talk to him right there from BOPA.
Yeah, Chris Brooks over here in the corner.
Chris Brooks, raise your hand. There you go. That's who you should talk to.
Yeah,
Gentleman in the hat.
yeah.
I just noticed you.
Last question.
Last question of the night.
Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Well, greetings. My name is John Tyler. I have a question that's more personal to me, might not relate to anyone else. But I run a festival in the city called Love Groove Festival. We've been trying to seek city support for forever since we started it. Yeah. Appreciate you.
We hosted you guys at the last resort artist retreat, right?
Yeah. I think we was the first to stay. Amazing house. Thank you.
Thank you.
But this year alone, we had over 1,500 people on Pennsylvania Avenue. Still without a famous headliner, all just us, all just the community. And with a permit, yes. We did do that process. They was dragging on us, but yeah, early September. But we still haven't, received any city support for any of the events we have done over the last 8 years. So my question is, how can I get really involved with the city? Because I've seen this year alone, the city has done like 3 to 4 different festivals at the harbor, but not really investing in this grassroots organization that we started over here. So that's my question.
That's a question.
Right there.
You're absolutely right. The city has produced lots of festivals this year, and we actually have an artist grant open now that closes on December 18th. It's a short runway, but we did open a new artist grant. The city does not have a pipeline for specific artist grants. We rely on our partnership with BOPA. Chris Brooks runs the Arts Council. That can probably be that is our official arts council that directs, that give out money to individual artists. But John Tyler just called me. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. We'll do.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
I want to give a special thanks to Tanya Miller Hall, Shanique Smith, and Derek Adams. This was a very engaging and enlightening panel. So thank you so much. And again, this is for celebrating the African Americans' 20th anniversary. So if you don't get a chance, please come back, stop down in the department and look at the beautiful, there's a nice exhibit there that talks about the inception of the African American department, as well as beautiful artwork. And we also have artwork in the main central hall from Chris Wilson. There's 4 pieces of artwork there. So yeah, we're getting to be known for the great artwork that's coming in this building. So we're waiting for yours, Derek, at some point. So thank you all. So let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you. Young lady at the table before you leave. And again, thank you for coming and I hope to see you at many more programs.